You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. Everything happens in divine timing. Everything happens as it's supposed to. Even the frustrating things, even the parts where you are waiting and waiting, you will be different because of it. And where you are supposed to go in your life will be with the information that you gathered and you learned and you grew from through this experience. It is shaping you to the next place that you are meant to go in your life. And that can be really hard to accept when you're going through the trenches. Hello there, and thank you so much for joining me today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. My name is Felicia, and I am here just to share a little bit of my heart, a little peek into my life and how my psyche and my whole being has processed everything that's going on, just to share a little bit from within. The reason I started this podcast is because I wanted people to feel like they had a safe place where they could come and just hear real conversation, like that real truth. And I think so much of what we have going on, we're not alone in this world. We're not alone in our joys. We're not alone in our sorrows. And so even if you may not be going through exactly what I'm going through, maybe there's a part of you that hears and just takes away your own little bit from what I said. Maybe there's encouragement or inspiration. Maybe there's comfort or resonance. Maybe this just gives you some good ideas, or at least carves out a little bit of time where you feel like you are connecting with somebody who is like-minded and shares same values or belief systems, or just joyful energy, if nothing else. This week, I really want to share a little bit more of what happened to me last week, and this feeling that I have come to that, everything works out in divine time. And I've known this before. If you've listened to other episodes of my podcast, sometimes this theme comes up where it's like everything is working out exactly as it's supposed to. But right now I feel like I'm in this very unique crossroads where there is so much that is changing and so much that I am feeling fearful about that I have no idea how it's going to go. And yet there's starting to be these subtle levels of intuition and signs coming into my life that are just helping to remind me and reinforce that everything happens in divine timing. Everything happens as it's supposed to, even the frustrating things, even the parts where you are waiting and waiting. And so I've got lots of that to share with you, especially just, fun, and I say that with quotes, fun things that have happened last week, but also a very special experience that I had doing acupuncture for I'm just going to say for the first time. I'll get more into that later in today's episode, and I'll dive in. I'll share it all with you. But first, every week, I like to start with a little bit of an astro check-in. So let's talk about what is happening astrologically right now and how can we just use some of the themes going on for our highest good, how to take care of ourselves, how to maybe tone some stuff down or put our energy somewhere. Right now, we are coming off of a very intense lunar eclipse that happened last Sunday, middle of May, May 15th. This was an intense lunar eclipse in Scorpio. It was this entire lunar month that actually began at the beginning of May has just been kind of bound by this eclipse season. And this is intense energy. It is the changing of doors opening and doors closing. It is unpredictable change, stuff that we cannot control, both in the world around us and in our personal lives. And specifically, this one is happening in the signs of Scorpio and Taurus. And so if you have a lot of fixed signs in your chart, so Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, or Leo, they say that you're even a little bit more susceptible to feeling like there is a lot going on in your world. Now, I can share with you that the people that are closest to me, many of my inner circle has placements in these signs. My partner, Dave, he is a Scorpio sun. He also has a couple other placements in Scorpio. I am a Taurus moon. So one of my major personal planets was right in the mix of all of this. And yeah, I can say just from our experience that this last season has been intense. It deserves like a nice big breath. Because even if you don't have placements in those signs, or if you have no idea if you have placements, maybe astrology is just something that you don't tune in closely to, and that is totally fine. But if you can look at your life right now and you just feel like, man, there has been a lot going on. It does feel like the tides are turning my life. There's things that I can't control that are going on. If there's a lot of just heaviness in your world, then you should first know that you are not alone. Many, 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 many of us are feeling the effects of this heaviness right now. And the thing is especially with this, coming off of the lunar eclipse is saying, let go, let go, let go, let go. There's so much going on that you can't control. And in fact, the more you let go, the more the universe, God, the divine, they can conspire to put everything in the right direction for you. If no matter what is going on, you can have this strong belief in your entire body that things are being rearranged to work for your highest good, that all you have to do right now is observe, relax, do the best that you can, keep putting one foot in front of the other, then you're exactly where you're meant to be right now. And on top of the lunar eclipse, we're also in the middle of this Mercury retrograde. So things are not as they appear right now. And it's so important for us to remember this. In fact, every single day since May 16th, which was last Monday, I've literally had to tell myself this. No matter how bad things seem right now, no matter how much you want to act on what you feel is true right now, it is important just to remember that you don't have all the information. Things are still in flux. It is not the best time to act on our impulses. And that's not to say not to trust yourself. Trust yourself. One of the things that I've been doing is I've been writing down every damn feeling in my journal. I have been very clear about what I feel is going on right now. I'm not dismissing it, but I'm not acting on it. Because if I was acting on it, I would turn those fights that I've had with Dave into just blowing up our entire relationship. And I am pretty sure that that is not the actual best thing for either of us. And I share that very candidly because there are so many of us who, you go through frustrating points in your relationship, in your partnerships, in your work environment, where you reach that point where you're like, something's got to give, something's got to change. And it's very easy to just say, F it, and pull yourself out. And sometimes that is what is needed to do. I've been there in other situations in my life where I'm like, yep, I need to remove myself from this position. But sometimes that's the easy way out. Sometimes we want to do that because we are just so scared or we're so fed up and we don't have all the information we need to actually figure out what's happening. Or we're only staying right there on the surface. We're just leaving is just what's on the surface, and we don't understand that there's more to it. That there's softness that needs to happen. There's communication that needs to happen. There's revelations that need to happen. There's sometimes all of the above where we need to get through to that other side where we can actually have real conversations and real dialogue and actually get somewhere with it. Now that I am about a week out from, the intense eclipse, I will say that, don't worry about Dave and I. We're doing okay. Everything is fine. It's just been intense, I think, for both of us. I won't speak for him, but I know we both have just been under a significant amount of stress dealing with everything that's going on in front of our lives right now. We have this huge health crisis that he's going through, but when one partner is in a health crisis, it affects your entire family, your household. And then, of course, anytime you're in a health crisis, it significantly impacts your finances, which significantly impacts the amount of stress you have going on in your life, your ability to feel safe and stable. And so these are big issues, and they create a lot of fear, a lot of resentment, a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration. And then, of course, you got two different people who want to communicate about these things in very different ways. And so, that's just the thing that we've been navigating. And this is heavy stuff, like I said, very heavy stuff. And I'll share more about that later. I'm just going to try to stay on topic with this astrological part. I will say that as we come further and further away from this lunar eclipse and the heaviness that happened with these doors of change that are opening and closing, we can also start to remember that we are entering the final part of this lunar cycle, and specifically the full moon part of the lunar cycle, where it is time for us to really get quiet, to go inward, to find as much release as we can, to really let things go. And you can kind of imagine yourself, if you have a meditation practice, you can feel some of that stuff just drip off of you and ground back down into the earth, to send it back where it came from. And you can also just practice getting really quiet. Spend time every evening that's not on your phone. If you want to journal, you can. If you want to just get quiet, if you want to listen to music, or if you have any musical instruments like singing bowls or piano or guitar, you can take that as a way to kind of express and clear out your field. If you want to burn candles, just starting to tune into some of a little bit more of an inward process over this next week. I think that's going to be very, very supportive. And what you want to picture is that we are moving back towards a brand new blank slate. And that blank slate will fully arrive on Monday, early in the morning. I think it's like 5:30 Mountain Time on Monday morning, May 30th, which happens to be Memorial Day, right? So that's wonderful, because then you can take this opportunity to actually, maybe if you have the day off, you can really celebrate that morning by doing some yoga, going on a walk, getting outside in nature. This is that blank slate. It is the new moon, and it is in Gemini. It has no eclipses near it. Now it does have the Mercury retrograde for the next few days surrounding the new moon, but in general, this is really good energy. Gemini is a mutable air sign. Just what we need after the heaviness of last month. In general, Gemini is a very logical sign. It is very intellectual. Its slogan is, I think, but it is a light-hearted sign. It likes to bubble on the surface. It loves to gather information. It wants to research. It wants to talk. It wants to express. It wants to write. It wants to get into good conversations. And it loves to kind of flit around like a butterfly and be in very many subjects. So it could be like one of those conversations where you feel like you talk about everything under the sun. And in general, there's a sense of lightness and airiness with Gemini. It's not going to necessarily be like the kind of deep conversations that maybe you'd get more like with Sagittarius, where they really want to dive deep into the philosophy and everything. It's kind of like, no, I want to talk about it, but I want to keep going, and I want to try new things, and I want to share different aspects of it. I want to keep things light and airy. And so with the moon and the sun both being in the same place in Gemini when this blank page starts, to really start to use your mind to take whatever heaviness that you had felt this past month and bring it to a new level. To me, it's like, the way I'm picturing this is like, okay, what's done is done. I'm going to sage the heck out of it. I'm going to let go what I can. And now I'm going to start to use my mind to problem solve, to brainstorm, to start planning, to start researching. Where do I want to take my energy now? It is time for a new start. I'm going to set brand new intentions. And you can certainly build off of what you've been learning. In fact, if you want to kind of start with this new moon ritual around, what do I feel like is up for me right now? What are the lessons that I'm learning? Maybe you start to brainstorm, how am I going to put these into practice? How can I take some of my strongest takeaways that are very apparent in my life right now, and how can I integrate them into my entire field and put them into practice? These are going to be wonderful, wonderful ways for you to enter into this new month ahead. And just a reminder, a new moon is a wonderful time to start those manifestations, to set new intentions. And we really didn't do that last month because we had the solar eclipse in Taurus and then followed by the lunar eclipse. So it was a time where there was enough going on that we didn't need to set new intentions. So this is the first time in the last 2 lunar cycles that we've really started over and had that chance to just wipe the slate clean. So again, using your mind, if you even want to think back to how this year has gone, what are some of the things that have come up for you? How are things unfolding in your life? Are you getting closer to your goals? Are you having a lot of obstacles come up? In what ways are you contracted in your life? And in what ways are you expanding? Taking this time just to acknowledge and assess where you are and really, dive deep into your heart around what you want and where you want your energy to go. This is going to be the time to do it. Well, next Monday, okay? So I'm giving you a little bit of a two-part assignment here. This week, if you're listening to this the end of May, you're going to use the final week just to quiet down, to let go. I would suggest taking a lot of baths or going to walk near water, or you can do any kind of self-care that feels best for you. Maybe you have a lot of fire in your chart and you want to go for a lot of runs. Maybe you just want to work with the earth and get really earthy in that way. That's also fine. In whatever ways that you can just reset your own spirit, kind of allow yourself to go back to zero. Do that by the time we get to Monday. And then from Monday, you might notice you have tons of energy. Gemini is a very energetic sign too, ruled by Mercury. Lots of stuff going on then. So just let that energy come, set those intentions, and then see what begins to happen. And for all of you out there who just love this kind of work, who not only love self-growth and personal development, but doing so with intuitive energy and really thinking deeper into what else is out there that can help support us, stuff that we can't always control, but that we can be influenced by spiritually, then I highly recommend that you actually check out the self-care guide that I create for free every month. It is a part of our Patreon page. So we do have a podcast level of subscription where you can listen each week with no ads, and then also get this unique lunar self-care guide delivered to you. It is always more than 10 pages and dives deep into the new moon, the full moon for the month ahead, as well as self-care ideas that specifically have to do with the sun sign. It is quite an inspirational and beautiful guide that can just help encourage you and hold space and inspire you. And in addition, there's also a new moon ritual and a full moon ritual included in every single guide. So if you want to take this to the next level, you can join our community there and get all of this inspiration and more. You can also, if you just want to try it out first, you can go to abitfromwithin.com/free guide and sign up for our mailing list and get a copy of this month's guide for free. And that will be coming out later this week. So if you're listening to this on Tuesday, check back on probably Thursday. And that's when the new one for Gemini season, it's the 6th lunar cycle of the year, will be out. And I'll make sure that if you download it, that you get the correct one into your hands. And I will just wrap this astro check-in up by saying that I'm always very proud of the lunar cycle self-care guides, because I do so strongly believe that there are so many ways that we can think outside the box when it comes to our self-care. And the more that we just try to do the same old things, sometimes we don't get anywhere with that. Sometimes we need outside inspiration. And that's why I love using the zodiac signs throughout the year for different insights, different themes, different ways to think outside the box. I just found it so refreshing in my own spiritual practice and just in my life, just to invite in a way of thinking about things that I normally wouldn't have, I think we all need that. So let's dive into the heart of today's message, but first, a quick break. So, they say that timing is everything, and I know this to be true. And it's funny because no matter how much you can look in your life and be like, yes, everything happened at exactly the perfect time to lead me to where I am right now, I think we still so often struggle with the timing that is happening in the present, especially if we're not getting something that we want, or if we don't feel like we have control over where we are, or if we're worried about what is going to happen in the future. These are things that just take us totally out of the present moment and sometimes out of our faith that everything is working out for our highest good. And trust me, I've been feeling a lot of this lately. Like I mentioned earlier in today's episode, I had a crazy week last week. And on top of it, I will follow up from a story that I shared in last week's episode around this insurance appeal that we've been working on so hard. This has to do with a procedure that Dave had to have in December. that we worked in November, so prior to the procedure, to make sure it would be covered because it was going to have to take place out of network. Well, the procedure happened in January. They denied our coverage, and so we had to go for an appeal, and they denied that appeal, and so we had to send in a second appeal, and we were supposed to have this final review with the appeal specialist last Monday. And I had been thinking, oh my gosh, this is such perfect timing because it's happening right during this lunar eclipse. Finally, the door will close to this crazy long chapter, this bill that has just been looming over our heads, causing so much tension in our household. And I was like, finally. Well, we wait for the phone call. It never happens. I spent literally four different days last week. I was on the phone with UHC being given the runaround. The first day they were like, oh, I'm so sorry we had the wrong phone number, but don't worry. Like we're seeing here, that will reverse any decision that was made there. We'll give you the chance to chat with them. And then we'll call you back in 24 hours. They don't call me back. I call them. They're like, oh my gosh, I see here that you talked to someone, but it looks like the correct phone number wasn't put in. Let me get that. It's going to take 48 hours for us to, verify that this old phone number isn't your phone number and redirect everything. You'll hear from us in 24 to 48 hours. Okay. 48 hours pass. I call back again. She was wonderful. She escalates it again. At this point, I'm like losing my mind. I'm so frustrated with this process. She escalates it again. She actually gets me a new appeal session date. She gives me a reference number. We rescheduled it for this Monday. So today, the day I'm recording this, for 10 a.m. Central Time. They verify they have the correct phone number. We wait by the phone. And this time I'm like, perfect. This is it. The door is going to close. We're going to get the result. I did so much work yesterday preparing for this, like just energetically, because to be honest, I've been a mess about this bill. I've been a disaster. I've been so worried about this, just this hanging over our heads. And I know that I have to come to a place where we are fine either way. I know I can't control the outcome. I can do the best that I can. I can put every effort forward, but I cannot control what happens. And so I spent the evening last night just clearing out my energy. I saged our house. I purged. I wrote everything that I'm feeling down on a letter, and then I burned sage over it and ripped it up. I'm like one of those, like, I'm weird about burning things, especially because I was doing all of this in my closet, so I didn't want to burn the letter, but I did everything else. And I just meditated and I cleared my energy, and I was so sure that this morning that we'd get the phone call, we'd present our case, that we'd get the decision, and we'd be able to move on. Well, this morning, 10 a.m. Central Time comes and goes. They don't call us. So I wait 6 minutes until I'm like, I want to be gracious, right? Like they'll call us, like give them a couple minutes, first thing in the morning, Monday morning, maybe they're running behind. So I hop on the call with the UHC, and I'm not kidding you, an hour and 40 minutes this morning trying to get to a supervisor who could help me. And, I can't imagine how difficult those jobs must be, to talk to people who are frustrated. And I was frustrated. But I always try to be very mindful that it's not their fault. I try to just be clear, and I try to be direct. And I try to present the full picture. And I had to admit that I was like, I am, not feeling very great about hanging up this phone call today, because he was like, after an hour and 40 minutes, was still like, well, I see that you were given this date and time, but I don't know why. I don't know who gave the person that gave you this date and time this. So now I have to go talk to that person. So still nothing is resolved with this. And I am trying to stay in a place where I am feeling very grounded about it. And the reason I share this as a follow-up is because sometimes there are things in your life that you cannot control, that you wish more than anything you can control. I mean, Dave and I have gone back and forth just racking our minds around what else could we have done in this situation. We worked with them before the procedure was even done, and we were reassured multiple times that it would be okay and would be taken care of. And here we are almost 6 months after this procedure. Actually, after it has been over 6 months because the procedure was beginning of December. So it's been more than 6 months since the procedure, and we're still fighting about this thing. And I just so badly want closure. But we don't get to always choose what happens in the way that things unfold in our life. And I was reminded of this last week in this very, very special, kind of wild experience. What's the best way to tell this story? So if you've been listening for a long time, you already know this story, but for those of who are new listening to the podcast, I'll give a brief recap. Part of, and this story is so deeply connected to my own journey. And honestly, it's such a big part of the growth of this entire podcast or business, A Bit From Within, and wanting to share a bit from within. So it was in February of 2019, so more than 3 years ago, that I had just a traumatic incident happened to me. It was a mixture of a physical health problem, being overheated at a pool, also a huge adrenaline dump that happened. I had just put earnest money down on our first home. I had had way too much caffeine that day. I had swam, I didn't eat, and I think there was just so much happening. And then I was coming out of a hot tub, and I just felt like I was about to pass out. I lay down on the floor and I couldn't get back up. And it was like my entire nervous system got shot. And I don't know if it happened while this exact incident was happening or if I was just not in a good place. And then, of course, when you are on the floor of a pool and you can't get up, and I was supposed to go teach a yoga class within the next hour. The amount of pressure and the amount of humiliation and embarrassment and just helplessness I felt. The paramedics had to come take me out on a stretcher. It was very, very intense. And it left me in a position where, like I said, my nervous system was shot. I was having intense panic attacks. I was terrified to go out into public. It didn't matter if that public was like teaching a yoga class or going to the grocery store or being in a bank at an ATM. It didn't matter where I was. If I was somewhere in public, I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to control my body. And I lived like this, in this very, very intense, heightened state of panic for more than a year. I would say the first 6 months were the hardest. And then I started to find other ways to kind of cope, which did help, but I just still didn't quite feel like myself. Like anytime I would start to get signs of panic in my body, if my body temperature would rise, if my heart would start racing, if my cheeks would flush, it would instantly go to that place of panic. And so I was really fighting with trusting myself. And honestly, when the year anniversary came around, I started to just really doubt if I would ever be the same. I'm like, am I going to be like this for the rest of my life? Where I'm this worried about being able to trust my body, and am I always going to feel panic? Am I always going to wonder what could happen? How can I rebuild this faith in myself? And one thing I learned about panic attacks then is that the only way to face panic attacks is by slowly and gently encouraging yourself to face what it is you're afraid of. And I do feel like that was true for me. So since then, every time I've done something that I'm terrified of or that I'm not sure I'm going to make it through, like I could remember sitting in doctor's offices or going to the dentist and thinking, okay, if I can get through this, I can prove to myself that I will be okay. And I had to do a ton of self-talk where I'm here right now. I'm safe. I can look around. I can leave if I need to, give yourself that permission to flee. But I'm showing up right now. And I just proved myself little by little, and everything kind of moved along. And then I would say that I was still feeling a lot of this panic up until Dave got sick last August. So it was about 2.5 years of feeling that. And then once Dave started to enter his health crisis, I had to shift into a different place mentally. Because it's like our couples therapist, he always tells us, like, you know, you're both allowed to freak out or have a crisis, but you can't have it at the same time. And of course he wasn't meaning that as far as this health stuff goes, but it was true. It was like, if Dave is this level of, I mean, not only was he just suffering so much from his physical symptoms, he was having intense chest pain, VTAC, palpitations. I mean, his body was out of whack and we didn't know why. But a lot of those symptoms also sounded like anxiety, and I'm sure they were very anxiety provoking for him as well. And so I had to kind of rise up and be the strong person that was like, you're okay, you're okay. And seeing somebody else in a position where they were completely losing it forced me kind of in a crisis to have to flip into a new state of being. And so I feel like that kind of naturally helped as far as like the panic part would go. But I would say that it didn't exactly help me feel like I was in my body. And last year, towards the end of last year, I had actually gifted myself 3 readings with an astrologer. And one of the things that she picked up, she's not only an astrologer, but she's a medium as well. And she just noted, she was like, I'm just like, you're not in your body. I know you're trying really hard. I can see how much you're showing up, but you are not in your body. And I admitted, I was like, I haven't felt like I've been in my body fully since, February 2019, when all of this started. And, I've tried. I've tried to do all of the things that they recommend. I've had the magnesium. I do meditation. I do slow yoga. I've tried to reset my nervous system. I feel like I've done everything. And while I've made progress, at that point, I was just like, I don't know what else to do. And so life goes on. Fast forward to last week. I got the name of this new acupuncturist who is not far from my house. And my dad had seen him, my mom had seen him. My mom had actually gone back several times, and she raved about him so much that she even had my sister, while she was here in town for 1 week, go and see him. And she even went back again the same week that she was here. She went twice because she had such a good experience. And so immediately I started, to be honest, I had never really known that much about acupuncture. I had had one experience prior with an acupuncturist, and honestly, I was not impressed by it. I didn't feel like it did anything for me. It felt kind of uncomfortable. I didn't get very good vibes from the doctor who administered any of that. It was not a great experience. And so I didn't really think much about it. And so I started to research it, and I was reading all of this stuff about acupuncture can really help with different kinds of inflammation and can really help with autoimmune disorders. And that's totally what Dave's going through. So Dave went and saw him last week, had a really good experience, very similar to what I had heard from my mom and my sister. And so I had scheduled to go last week, and I went in, honestly, I was a little bit afraid, because I don't know if you ever feel this, but sometimes when you hear a lot of great things about an experience or service, it kind of brings the expectations up high. And then I was kind of worried, like, what if this doesn't go well for me? Or what if I don't get that much out of it? Or what if I'm just a dud, right? Like, I don't know if that sounds silly to say, but I was just like, what if, this works for everybody else, but what if I'm just a dud? Like, and so I went in just with this open mind, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I ended up having a very incredible experience. In fact, so the acupuncturist I was working with, he doesn't only do acupuncture, but he also specializes in gong, which is like needleless energy work. And I'd never done anything like this before. And so he didn't even use any needles in me, just did this energy work where, essentially you're just laying in Shavasana, and then energy stuff is happening. I don't know. I don't know how it works. I just know that while I was laying there on the table, I had a crazy vision happen for me. And it was like I could hear my spirit guides. I could hear the voice of one very clear. And it felt like an older gentleman. He was kind of over on my left side. And he just said, "You are exactly where you need to be right now." And then there's a little bit more that happened with the vision. And then it came to this vision of this horse right in front of me. And it was this beautiful horse. And the horse put their head up to mine. And I started just to feel like I was opening up. And after about 20 more minutes on the table, is towards the end of this session, it's just like, it felt like something just brand new just kind of clicked into my entire energy field. And it was this knowing. That's the only way I can put this, is this knowing without a shadow of a doubt. I was like, I have not felt this in my body since the pool incident. I was like, holy shit, I feel restored. I feel like something that has been missing for literally more than 3 years just clicked back into place. And I felt like this huge breath in, like, and then, slowly came out of the session and chatted with the doctor, and we were talking about all kinds of different spiritual things and whatnot. And it felt so good. And that entire night, it's not like my life changed, right? Still have this Bill thing happening, still have tension with Dave, still, dealing with life during Mercury retrograde, where everything that seems to be in progress feels like it's going backwards, plenty of stuff happening. But suddenly I was just like, I just feel, there's no other way to describe it, but I just feel more present. I feel like I'm back. Oh, it felt so good. In fact, that night I was up kind of late, just enjoying the quiet of the evening. And I felt again, just this overwhelmed feeling of, I am back in my body and I never want to leave. Oh my gosh. It was like something just got straightened out in my entire intention line, my energy line. And I'm just feeling so grateful. And I was overwhelmed with this, knowing, or this realization that timing is everything. For some reason, I don't know why it needed to take 3.5 years for me to feel this way again, but things work out how they're supposed to. And I don't need to stress about the fact that, for the past 3 years, that wasn't in place for me. I went on a journey for sure the last 3 years. And in fact, one thing that I just think is such an interesting little tidbit is, so right after the pool incident happened, I was there with my friend Katrina, and we had talked, right after. She obviously watched me go through the whole thing. She brought me home after the paramedics had cleared me. And she knew how hard it was for me. And she knew I was very afraid to go back to the pool. And we had scheduled, it was probably like 6 weeks after the incident. We're like, let's go back and let's try to face it. And she's an angel, like an earth angel. But she was like, let's go to the pool. Let's just see what happens. Let's feel it out. If we don't get even in, that's okay. But let's go back and face it. And so we did. And we actually got down into the water, and I was swimming laps again. I couldn't believe that it was happening. And while I was swimming laps, I was backstroking through the water. And I remember just thinking about, and it was so funny because it was literally happening during a Mercury retrograde that we went back. And I was telling her, I'm like, it's cool because retrogrades are a wonderful time for redoing things that didn't go right the first time, or didn't get completed, or saw all the way through. And so I said, this is kind of magical that this is happening during a Mercury retrograde. And I remember thinking, I'm like, I need to share this story with others, because this is such a huge thing that happened to me, and I want other people to go through this, to know they're not alone. Because I I felt like nobody could understand what I went through. I felt like I couldn't describe it to anyone and I wished more than anything that I just had somebody who could see me, who could be like, I know exactly what you're going through and you're going to be okay. I don't know when, I don't know how, but you're going to be okay. And that is when I felt and I heard so strongly, like, you're going to have to share a bit from within, because there's a bit of this story that somebody out there is going to also be able to take a bit from this from, and it makes sense, and it's real, and it's true, and it's from within you. And that's how this whole thing started. I think I went home, and I'll have to double check the LLC or the registration for the website, but I went home and I reserved the name that, I think it was that date, which may say something because it's, not really that great to start all of this stuff during a Mercury retrograde. But here we are, I don't know, more than 3 years later, during a Mercury retrograde, having this experience where everything clicks back into place. And I think for me personally, I can only share what feels very true for me. What feels true in my experience is that things work out how they're supposed to. And when something doesn't feel like it's worked out how it's supposed to, it's because you don't know the full story yet. And trust me, that doesn't mean that you can't have big feelings about the stuff that feels like unfair or wrong in your life. Of course you are able to. Of course I can feel frustrated with this bill. Of course I can feel sad about everything that Dave and I have gone through. But I have told him from the beginning, this entire health crisis has happened to you not because you deserve it, not because you've done something karmically to bring this on. Of course not. But I know without a shadow of a doubt that when you come through this, that you will be different because of it, and where you are supposed to go in your life will be with the information that you gathered and you learned and you grew from through this experience. It is shaping you to the next place that you are meant to go in your life. And that can be really hard to accept when you're going through the trenches. And it's up to you, you don't have to take my word for it. Personally, I do feel like I have that optimism inside of me. I like to look to the bright side. I want to feel connected to the divine and the divine timing. And it comforts me a lot with my anxiety, with my frustrations, with my fears. And it's something that I've specifically been really, really focusing on breaking through since, my session last week, is just the amount of fear that it's time to face and to remember that fear does nothing for us, really. Yes, in certain situations, fear can kick on all of the right parts of our body to take us out of a dangerous situation. Obviously, that's why we are programmed the way we are. But in general, a lot of the stuff that we fear on a day-to-day basis are things that that are probably not even close to being reality. They're just things that kind of loom over us, that scare us, that shake us up, that keep us afraid, and then keep us stuck. And so I think, obviously, you can't force yourself always to not be afraid, but you can shift your mindset, and you can focus on being here now. And you can focus on knowing that every moment that you are here now, that this is all that you ever actually have, is the here and now. And the here and now will change. I keep telling myself that the here and now that you're experiencing will change. And when things change, you will know without a shadow of a doubt how this bill is going to get paid, whether it's by the insurance company or whether some gift from the universe or something is going to happen that will clear this. Your here and now will change, and you don't have to be afraid. Everything is going to work out how it's supposed to. Sometimes you have to backtrack. Sometimes you have to cry because it doesn't feel fair. Sometimes you have to act in spite. Sometimes you have to get really creative in your problem solving. But eventually things will shift. We know that to be true. So I don't know if that helps you or inspires you or encourages you. I hope that it does. And I will say, I think whenever you're dealing with something really hard in your life, it can be really nice to just get yourself exposed to a different energy. And that means sometimes you have to schedule that lunch date with that friend of yours who you haven't seen maybe since before the pandemic, or schedule a phone date with somebody that you haven't talked to in a few months. Find those people who you know you, whose energy you really like, that makes you feel lighter and back to yourself, and reach out to them. And, if you don't have a friend that, quite fits that bill, maybe it is seeing a special energy worker or a massage therapist or an acupuncturist or chiropractor. And it could be anything. It could be your hairstylist. It could be sometimes just going out and getting a different energy, having different conversations that you would normally have. Sometimes that can just make a big difference too in how you feel and how you can reset your energy, especially when you feel stuck. And I think all of that, especially the socializing energy, is especially accessible right now while the sun just moved into Gemini last week. Like I mentioned earlier, Gemini has all of this social quality, communication, connection, curiosity, learning, being influenced by sharing ideas. So this is a really, really good time in life just to get that extra perspective, take a new course, open up your mind. And again, remember that it's okay for things to be light, especially after the heaviness, especially after the darkness. And don't force it. You can't force it. But you can invite it. Invite in ease, invite in light. And hopefully that will make all of the difference for where you are right now. All right, let's close today's episode with a card drawing. I have Tasha Silver's deck, the Wild Offerings Oracle. And we'll just shuffle these cards and see how the universe wants to contribute to this conversation. Whoa. Okay. That was a bit messy, but as you can hear, we have a card. And it is patience. If you've ever tried to shift a problem, there's probably something to learn from embracing it. May I let this be for now. Help me relax and trust every need will be met. Often change soon follows. Could that be more perfect? I don't think so. I don't even know if there's anything better to say as we wrap up today's episode. Patience. May we have the patience that we need to keep going. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me today. If this is your first time tuning in, I would love it if you would subscribe to our podcast and tune in each and every week for these hopefully very inspiring and refreshing conversations. And of course, I would love to invite anyone who has never had a chance to leave a review or a rating of our podcast, and in whatever platform you listen to this, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you can go and just give us a great rating and review to help spread the word of this podcast, share it with others, and get this message out there, we would so appreciate that. Every week I come here for more than 2 years now, sharing my heart with you, and it feels so good to be able to grow this message and this platform and be able to have it shared with like-minded people who need this same encouragement in their lives. So if you would be able to do that for me, it would mean the world to me. And of course, if you want more, you can subscribe to our newsletter at abitfromwithin.com. You can get that free self-care guide there. You can download it there. Or if you'd like to really tune in and be a part of our A Bit From Within community, check out our Patreon page. There's lots of different kind of offerings there. And you, of course, get that free self-care guide every single month delivered to you. Put a lot of work into that. And you get ad-free episodes of the podcast. And then depending on what level you want, meditation, yoga, the whole shebang. So if that is something you are interested in, or if you know somebody who that would be perfect for, please share and spread this word. Thank you again for tuning in. I can't wait to reconnect with you next week. So until next time.